Hello, and welcome to Campus Movie Fest's final roundtable of the 2020-2021 tour year. My name is Evan Padgett, and I'm the director of CMF. Today, we'll be hearing from the creators of the top 5 student films of the year. Now, let's introduce the filmmakers we've got with us today. First up, we have Kheyal, Roy-Meighoo, and Isaac Gazmararian from Emory University with Her Bunny's Tale. Now, in addition to being a Best Picture nominee, the film also competed for Best Cinematography, Best Directing, Best Animation, and they won Best Music and Sound, Best Production Design, Best Drama, and was one of the Disney Women in Film category winners. Congrats. I'll just call out someone that could not be here, Ivy Wooldridge from Kenyatta College with the film Via, who's also a Best Picture nominee. Next, we have Meiya Lim from San Jose State University with Igniting Change. Her film competed for Best Production Design and won Best Animation, first place in the Elfenworks and Harmony with Hope category, and also was a Disney Women in Film category winner. Next, we've got Michael Berry from the University of Missouri with Bump in the Night. The film was up for Best Cinematography, Best Special or Visual Effects, Best Director, and won Best Story and Best Comedy. And finally, we have Corey Marr and Baez from the University of Central Florida with OLLIE. OLLIE competed for Best Story and won Best Cinematography, Best Editing, Best Director, and was the final Best Picture winner of the night. So, wow. Congratulations to everyone's success this year. Truly spectacular work. So let's get into some questions. Now, starting with Isaac and Kheyal. Just starting with a general question, what is the very first movie that you can remember seeing that gave you that aha moment, that got you excited and energized about making your own films?
I think for me, so the reason we decided to do a stop motion is we both really, really love animation. So for me, at least, watching Wallace and Gromit shorts as a kid was a big inspiration. And I always loved making things and like using my hands. I'm always like working on something. And so those films, watching those at such a young age really inspired me, as well as I remember Nightmare Before Christmas. I absolutely loved that film, and I was fascinated. I watched all the behind the scenes as like a little kid. And, once I got over the scarier bits, I finally would watch it, and it fascinated me from the start.
Awesome. What about you, Isaac?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great answer. I personally, I like it feels like I slowly became interested in film over time from when I was like 10 years old to like 14 years old. I became interested in more so in like making films like for fun with friends. So there isn't like a super specific like first memory that I have with films. I'd say in terms of like stop motion animation, Fantastic Mr. Fox, of course, has been just like one of my favorite films of all time in terms of charm and overall animation quality and everything with that. That's been a big inspiration for me. And then other films that give me that much that like inspire me to become a filmmaker other than like that like later on in my career have definitely been Blade Runner 2049 and more recently Parasite as well, just in like the feelings of awe and wonder that it really inspires, and it really pushes me to try and make some art.
Awesome. Meiya, what was that first movie that inspired you?
I don't think, for me, it's hard to pick favorites. So I don't think I had like a first movie that really inspired me, but kind of my journey into filmmaking started with like Adventure Time. Drawing fan art for that show really got me into like doing art. And then in high school, I really loved watching a bunch of like short films, some live action, some animated. And because I didn't really know a lot about animation, I kind of got into like live action filmmaking, did took some filmmaking classes in high school. And then when it got to kind of like choosing what college to go to and what to major in, I thought like, oh, if I combine, you know, filmmaking and art, two things that I really love, it kind of makes animation. And I had done like a little bit of animation, like claymation classes in the past, but it was really in college where I kind of rediscovered my love for animation, like 3D, 2D, any type of animation. And that's kind of like, I think what inspires me now and what inspires me to, you know, keep making films is definitely all the short films that I watch at different festivals. Just seeing all like, you know, all the messages that you can say in just like a short amount of time is really inspiring to me as a filmmaker.
Cool. So were you like looking through the course catalog? Like you didn't necessarily go to the college you went to for animation, but you found it while you were going there.
It was actually it was the major that I chose first before like choosing different colleges I went to. So I definitely like, it was definitely around that realm of either animation or film, but then I kind of as I was going to like tour at different campuses, I was like, oh, I really like, you know, animation and all the different things involved with the animation industry that I didn't know about before, like 3D modeling, you know, just so many different things involved in animation that I wanted to learn more about.
Right. Cool. So Corey, Abby.
You want to go first, Abby, or?
Sure. I guess like the movie that inspired me was Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. When I was a kid, my grandmother used to have a bunch of VHS tapes in her house, like all sorts of movies. And I remember at an early age, I think I was 7 or 8, I wanted to watch Lord of the Rings, but there were 2 VHS cassettes. One of them was the movie, the other one was a special feature. And I accidentally popped in the special feature, and I just was introduced to this world of filmmaking. I was just baffled. I'm like, up until that point, I just thought movies were real. And then that kind of clarified that no, like people make movies. They all get together and they bring different people from all over the world, and they work on it tirelessly. And I remember just being fascinated. I kept asking my grandma, like, what is that? And she didn't know much. She just told me, oh, there's a director and he says action with a megaphone, and then everybody does everything. And I was like, well, that's what I want to do. And after that, I just kind of started discovering more films as I went along. I lived right next to a video store. I would rent anything I could, watch the movie, and then the special features. So, and that little tradition started with The Lord of the Rings. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Not to bring myself into it, but like one of the first like movies that I bought was Scream on VHS, and like there were two tapes. Like one was the movie, one was the movie plus the commentary. So that's, I don't know, just interesting. Just a weird little VHS world.
Yeah. God.
So I kind of got into filmmaking later. I started like senior year of high school, and I just started like watching GoPro videos, and I would travel a lot, and I kind of just started editing. And then my brother, he always went to art schools, like in middle school, high school. He went to college for film, and he was always making short films for fun. So it was really like my older brother. I saw that he could do it, so I was like, you know, why not do it? And then from there, like a feature film that really inspired me was Good Time, directed by the Safdie brothers. And like after watching that, like they have such a distinct like editing style, like shallow focus, you know, neon lights, and like an anxiety induced film. And from there, I really like got in the mindset of like, I want to make the films I want to make. And I'm not going to follow a standard. I'm just going to do what I want to do. And that just inspired me to be true to myself and to filmmaking. So, yeah.
Cool. And Michael.
Yeah, I think I've wanted to kind of make stuff for a long part of my life. I think one of the first movies that I saw that really gave me that feeling is when I was pretty young. I watched the Muppet movie, like from the 70s, like the very original Jim Henson one. And I really like, it's like this, if you haven't seen it, it's this like very meta movie about the Muppets meeting each other and going to become movie stars. And like by the end they make the movie, but they like the movie was what you just watched, and it's this whole thing. But something about like, I don't know, like puppets and like kind of big characters and stuff like that is really like, I feel like is really close to me because I like doing big stuff. I like doing big silly stuff with my work, and like the comedy cooked into it too. But something unique about like puppets, I think it's that you can like see the strings. It's sort of like what we've been talking about here now, or it's sort of like, it's like you can see how they did it just by looking at it, and yet you're like, that's a character, and you kind of have two minds working, or one mind is like, oh, there's a hand in there, and the other mind's like, oh, that's a guy. I like feel for that character's struggle, which I feel like super like made an impact on me and made me just want to like make this like mini Hollywood of my own, where I could make, you know, vampires and monsters and puppets and, you know, beasts. And I'm always trying to do stuff like that, and I think it all goes back to that.
Yeah, I love in your movie and other movies where there's just a puppet character that like there's no comment about the fact that, you know, humans are talking to puppets or anything. It's just like accepted. So Michael, we'll stay on you, and we'll get into some general film questions, or more specific film questions. So, you know, with Bump in the Night, with your movie last year, you know, you have very ensemble based work, but it also seems very like tightly scripted, tightly controlled. So as a filmmaker, and I'm not sure if you do the producing too, but how do you divide and conquer when you've got like a film that has multiple elements like Bump in the Night had? You know, or is there a control that you have to have over like what you're working on to keep a consistent tone, you know, between all those different elements?
It's really interesting. I don't know if I've exactly figured out how to get full control over it yet. I think I've over the years as I've developed my craft, I think I've just learned how to compromise and how to roll with punches, how to go, okay, we don't have time for everything. I think a fun example is that in Bump in the Night, every close-up shot of that dog is filmed like, you know, 3 days after we filmed everything else, in a completely different room where we set up a curtain, and the actress behind the puppet isn't the same actress, it's someone else. And it's that thought of like, okay, we have, you know, we have 8 hours at this location. What could we possibly do tomorrow if we don't get to it? Because I think a lot of my producing and directing, I do a lot of the writing, the producing, the directing, all of it. And a lot of it comes down to like in the moment stuff, where it's like, okay, let's get these takes right, and, you know, let's like, we go over time, actually an unfortunate amount of the time, just because I think we take it moment by moment. But like, I don't know, getting all those things together, getting that kind of ensemble together, it really just comes down to the fact that I have a lot of really close friends that I can count on, really talented people too. You know, everyone in Bump in the Night, everyone in that cast is like one of my best friends. And I'm in the cast because, you know, I think to myself, well, who could I be? Like what, like just to smooth things out, to keep the group as small as possible, but also like big. So really being able to like put trust in like my DP, whose name is Bryson, I get to kind of go, you know, like, you're in control of this. You've seen my storyboards, you know what I want. And we've built this like kind of, you know, this dialogue between us over the years. And then also being like, okay, you know, my actor, I had an actor named Jono who played the vampire, just being able to be like, okay, I know that you know how I want to hear this. You know, like you've known my directing style so long now that you can kind of give me what I want, and then I can go, okay, play with it, you know. And so it's a lot of handing off trust in these little compartments and being like, okay, here's your job. I know you know what to do. I know you're a star for this. And then sort of everything just kind of ends up falling together. And yeah.
so yeah, it seems like there's a lot of trials, a lot of you know, I didn't know how much like collaboration there was, like on set, like in the moment versus you know, like before when you mentioned storyboards, like, you know, you're kind of like crafting this like, you know, tight narrative, you know, like scene, but yeah, how much like collaboration are you actually utilizing like on set, or is at that point, or is it like done?
There is some. It is really tight. I mean, it's down to the line a lot of the times. Bump in the Night and Year Before It, The Prank, both of those scripts were actually pretty old scripts that I wrote with a sketch comedy team that performs at University of Missouri. And I wrote those scripts. I wrote the scripts, and we've had like we've performed them for live audiences, and they were big hits, and I always thought, okay, well, we need to make a video this Sunday. So they've had kind of years to like develop and like sort of change little by little in small ways. And but then kind of on set, everyone does have a very specific job. I try not to play with the script or really with the shot list or the storyboards too much, just because I kind of think, if I can look at it all on a storyboard, if I can look at it all on a script and go, okay, this works, then on set, all we have to do is get that. A lot of my DP thinks I'm insane, because I don't really get a whole lot of coverage, because I'm just kind of like, in the moment, I'm like, okay, well, we really only need one take of this line because I'm going to use it, and we'll just go it until we get a good take. And then he'll be like, you don't have a wide, you don't have a super close up. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to use that. And it drives him crazy, but it really comes down to like that meticulous planning. And then when you're on set, kind of pointing everyone in a direction and then being like, go.
Yeah, that I mean, it totally works. You know, and yeah, comedy is interesting, and you know, it never gets like the kind of acclaim that it should, considering like the good ones are, you know, so intricately like kind of put together. Cool. Well, let's hop over to Isaac and Kheyal with For Bunny's Tale. So I watched your making of for this film that you sent me, Isaac, and it seemed like there was, like, by necessity, a lot of prep work that went into this to make sure that every piece kind of fell into place during the week of movie making week. Like, how important to you both is pre-production to your process? You know, especially like you know, just a small team working on Her Bunny's Tale, and you know, like, yeah, why don't you talk a little about that?
Well, I guess, okay. Well, for me, I think the part that excites me the most, honestly, is the pre-production, because I had been kind of thinking about wanting to make a puppet like our main character for quite a while. So I was really excited. I had all these ideas and all these things that I needed to make to see if it would work. So that part always really excites me. And I mean, it was so important because during the week, we were filming. Isaac has a nice little, we converted like his basement into a studio. So we'd be in there like 12 hours a day doing the photos, because we took upwards of 4,000 photos for the film. And so the pre-production was a necessity. Like you were kind of saying earlier as well, Michael, like you have to do all of this meticulous planning ahead of time. And so for stop motion, there's also that whole other aspect of production design. So we had to make a table so that we would be able to like move quickly. We had to make sure that like we could have proper lighting rigging. We had to make sure that every little detail, we knew exactly how we were going to do it. So when the week started, we could really hit the ground running. So at least that was my method for it. I also kind of came up with a pre-production before I actually had a story. So
Yeah, no, that's definitely the case. And like you mentioned, like there's a lot of different things you have to think about differently. Like we had to build a custom table that had like a hole in it, and that also worked at like the right height that we needed to, so our backs didn't hurt for the entire week. So we could like have magnets that would connect to our feet beneath the boards, and that's stuff you wouldn't normally need to think about. So it's definitely good to think about that beforehand. But I will say I'm still surprised at how much in the moment decision making there was. Like we went through and we planned out the shots, but even during the week, like I think we had the idea to make the shadow monster itself like a little doll at the end while we were still filming, and we're just like, oh, this would be something nice to put in. And then other things like lighting wise, that was actually like having such a small space to light and just being able to use like 2 little LEDs to do it. Like that was a place where we were able to have a lot of fun in the moment, because we didn't have to spend, 30 minutes moving around C-stands and flags to get everything in the proper place. We could just be like, all right, I'm going to take this light and just move it right here with my hand. So like there were different areas of it that actually gave us more freedom in the moment, which actually I think like lighting for this one was like probably the most fun I've ever had doing that type of lighting work in cinematography. So yeah, it's like an interesting mix.
Yeah, it seemed like everything was kind of like put together in this, compressed like time period, that like everything had to like fall into place and go, according to plan, or else like the whole thing would kind of like fall apart. And that was another question I was going to ask you. Like you made use of like good transitions. Like when the main character like first tumbles into the 3D dream world, or when she escapes from it. And I was wondering, like what parts were planned beforehand, or something like that. Is that something that like you found in editing?
That the tumbling into it was definitely, we knew we wanted to do some type of like visual, like smooth transition to the 3D world. I think we realized like the specific shots that we wanted within the week of, maybe in like the first day or two is when we planned it out. And it was actually very necessary, because for that specific transitional shot, we only had a certain amount of like walls with the clouds, painted on them. So when we were doing the shot, we were literally like moving the wall up, taking the next wall, slotting it in, and then moving it up again, and like doing this little jigsaw pattern. But because we knew that we had to do that early on, we knew that we couldn't like cut down the walls beforehand, because we were initially going to like cut down the walls so they were a lot shorter. So like there were certain things like that was like very necessary to have that for. And I think it was, if we had made that decision like on like what that specific transition was a couple days later, it would have made it a lot harder, because we wouldn't have had all the moving pieces in place.
I think that was the one shot or one transition that we really planned before. A lot of it was like Isaac said earlier, it's like we get there, it's like, okay, this would be cool. I think every time we'd meet during the week, Isaac and I would get together and make a to-do list, be like, okay, this is a cool shot, this is a cool shot. And we just get so excited every morning with all of these like new ideas. So it was very much like that. Like the pre-production was also a part of it as we were filming, and we were just having such a great experience during it. So we had those few key elements that we had, but a lot of it was like what inspired us at the moment. So.
Also interesting on that, on the note sort of, we actually did a lot more pre-production work than made it into the film. Like what is actually shown in the film is maybe like 20 to 30% of like what our ideas were for the full story. We initially had 5 different like 3D animated worlds that we were going to explore, with all these different like facets and like different like, like building up this whole chase scene and everything like that. And we sort of like whittled that down to 3 worlds once we realized we might not have the time to put it in. And then we whittled that down to like 1 world in the week of, because we were like, we also don't have the time to make all of this at the same time. And so we did a lot of pre-production story-wise, and there were a lot of other things that we were planning on coming to fruition. But I think having that also forced us to, having like the story driven nature of that pre-production sort of forced us to make those decisions early on about what props we needed. Like we had to be very specific about what choice of shots we wanted to show, which objects, like where we showing the trains in this shot and then the cars in the next order. Like there were specific orderings for that, because theoretically in the full version of the film, had a specific ordering in the worlds that you're going to see later on. And I mean, I think it's still like it works, and we cut it down. I think that's, every film goes through that process, but this one especially did. But I think it helped us a lot to sort of at least have all of those ideas out there at first, and then cut it down from there.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, we'll wait for the sequel then. Awesome. Cool. So Meiya, you know, you had a, let me see what I want to ask about, because you know, I guess to start off with, like, you had a huge team, all kind of, I'm assuming, you know, like working at home or whatnot. Like, how are you mapping a project like this out, and like dividing it up? How much time are you spending on the prep work?
So for me, I ended up with a team of 19 artists. What At first, I didn't have a team. At first, I was like, I want to tell a story, but I don't have anyone to do it with me right now. And I had originally like done competed in CMF every year with like my roommates, but my roommates were really busy this year, understandably, because you know we were transitioning into like remote learning and everything. And so I'm really lucky to have to be at SJSU and be in the Shrunken Headman Club, which is the animation illustration club on campus, because like I feel like we have a really great community. And so I went on Instagram, and on my story I was like, hey, is there any like Shrunken Headman people who would be interested in making a short film with me in a week? And I got a lot of responses, a lot from like people I didn't know, like second years and third years who I didn't talk to as much. And they're like, hey, I'm interested. And I was like, oh, invite your friends too, so we can get like, you know, a whole like animation team. Because this was also the first year that I did like a fully animated film, because the past years I had done like live action and animation. And so it was kind of daunting taking it all on, but I had a close friend, Lillian Lee was my producer, and she honestly like saved me that week. I don't know how I would survive without her. She was like, hey Meiya, do you need help with like producing? And at this point we had a lot of people on her team, and I was like, yes, please. So she helped like organize a lot of things on like the production side, like setting up meetings, taking meeting notes. Eventually, when we got further into production, I actually had her in charge of like approving the visual development shots, whereas I was in charge of approving the animation shots. I think if I were to do it differently, I would definitely have assigned like an animation lead and a visual development lead, so that me and her could be focused on like production and direction and just overview of everything else, and taking on anything else that needed to be done. But yeah, I didn't expect to have such a large team. And so going into it, I was like, all right, what roles do you guys want, and what do you guys want to help out on this film? And so we kind of divvied it up. Some people were on visual development, very specifically, like some people were on background line art, and then like coloring those backgrounds. In terms of animation, most of the animation people kind of stuck from roughs to clean to coloring their shots. For story, we kind of had the story team overlap with a few other visual development and animation people, because it just like happened in the beginning. When we started it out, we had a bunch of people kind of design a board based on the idea we talked about. So we came into the story meeting with a bunch of different ideas, and the final film that we see now is kind of like a collection of those ideas all together. I also had someone on design who was in charge of all the like logos and the credits and the end sequence, and also my close friend who was in charge of all the music and sound. And so I was in charge of kind of keeping in touch with like the design and music and sound people like separately, from the rest of like the mess that was in the Discord. We set up a Discord for kind of all like approvals and just like talking to each other about like what we want this film to look like. We had a bunch of channels set up, and that was mainly where all the organization happened, that and like the Google Drive that we had. But mainly we had a few meetings, but most of like the crunch work, like on the weekend. We were trying to get the animation done because story had overlapped a little bit because we wanted to make it really good. But that in turn pushed animation back a couple days. So we were, really narrowing down on the animation during the weekend, and it got really crazy in our server. Like, people were staying up late to finish their shots, and we were like, all right, don't forget to do your homework and take rests because your health and also schoolwork is most important. But after that kind of weekend, I composited all the stuff that we did, and it turned into that final film. So in the end, it worked out, even though like at the time it kind of felt like everything was all over the place. I think like me and my producer were able to kind of sort things out and like distribute, organizing people and communicating with people in a way where, we could all, we made the film at the end and it all came together.
Yeah, I mean, that's super impressive. Like you built a little mini animation studio just for this film. Like how many people are in what was it called, the Shrunken Head?
Yeah, the Shrunken Headman Club. It's basically like all the animation illustration people, majors on campus, and plus like some graphic design people. But there are like, I don't know, 300, probably more people in the club.
Oh, wow.
And so I just contacted like some of them through social media, but the entire club is like very supportive and very ready to animate and just have a good time together.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely didn't feel like there were 19 different people like animating. Like it all like felt as of a piece, and I really liked how it felt like there was a real town and community like within the film, like built up around the main character, like even in the interior of her home. Like it felt like an actual house. Like how much, I guess, broadly, what was the time length of like from start to finish? Like you had the idea to finishing the movie, and like how much time was the team able to spend on like developing the other characters in town and stuff like that?
I think it's definitely shorter than I would have liked it to be because I started off the month of October. I was really busy like the first week because I had actually competed in like a 24-hour competition, animation competition, like the week before the CMF week. And so I was like, all right, like I got my team together, and then I had to like put off like thinking about the story and the idea for a little bit, but I knew I wanted it to either be about our experiences in quarantine with COVID going around and everything, because that has been a really impactful part of our lives, either that or the California wildfires, because we all live in the Bay and we've all been experiencing this firsthand. And so what we ended up doing is we narrowed it down to just focusing on the wildfires. And then I think we kind of started thinking of the idea and doing some pre-production work like right before like that week of production started for CMF.
Oh, wow.
And storyboarding actually like bled into, I think, like 3 days into the week, and that's what pushed animation back so much. And so like all like we couldn't do as much pre-production work as we wanted beforehand, which is why like everything kind of came together on that weekend, and we were like everything was a little bit chaotic because we were trying to juggle a lot of things. We wanted to have layouts done before we did animation so that the animators had like furniture and stuff that they're interacting with, and they draw it properly. But sometimes we just have to like get those rough layouts done and give it to the animator and like hope everything kind of stays the same. But I think like even with the time crunch, a lot of people really fell in love with the story and the characters they were making. All the people on my visual development team were really amazing to like kind of bringing life into these characters. We have like even in the backgrounds, at the end, there's just like a little, there's a shot with a little cookie tray. You can't really see it on like the first time you watch it, but if you look closely, there's like a little cookie tin that says for Vela, that like is obvious that like the little bear made it for the main character, and it's really cute. Like little things like that they put into the backgrounds, and little hints of animation, acting and animation kind of really brought these characters to life in this setting.
Yeah, like I loved like all the expressions on the faces. Like it was very well like animated in that way. Love it. Cool. Well, so over to Abby and Corey, and we can talk about OLLIE, but in all of your films, there's always a big focus on story. So how much time are you guys spending like getting the script right before you're bringing in the rest of the production team to work on like building it out?
You want to go first, Corey?
You can take over, Abby. You got it.
Yeah, we spend quite a bit with the scripts. Probably like 2 or 3 months, just kind of coming up with the story, and then just making sure that it's paced well, and then bringing in like the dialogue is always the trickiest part. OLLIE, I co-wrote OLLIE with Kheyal, who's also our cinematographer. And for this, we spent like a good 3 months, yeah. And it's always a priority to have the story and making sure the story is paced and sounds right, because we have no film without the story. So it's definitely on like on the highest spot of the priority list for sure. So yeah.
How much are you letting like the story change throughout the filmmaking process once you're actually making it, or is it like you said you spent 3 months on it, like that part is pretty much set at that point?
Well, I'm not really married to like everything I put on the script like completely, because sometimes an actor will bring in a good suggestion, or a DP or even a PA will bring in a good suggestion that may take the story in a slightly different direction. So me and Corey were very open with those type of suggestions. Like we always say that there's a time and a place for suggestions. So if you get us at the right time and the right place, then your suggestion is welcome. But yeah, we try to keep it pretty tight, but also welcome any type of feedback from the cast and the crew, as long as it benefits the story. So yeah, I don't know if you want to add.
Yeah, I can add to that. Like all our decisions were based on the story. Like every decision we made, the location, why are we shooting here? What does it serve to the story? What lens are we using? What movement we're staging? Just every little thing, like just, picking up clothes from Goodwill and having, Sebastian wear them and figuring out what location is he going to wear it? Why? What's the character's mindset? And even especially like in post-production, like we're always figuring out, why should we cut here? What's this going to do to the story? Is it going to change the story? Is it going to serve the story something better? So I think like we always just, we trusted our crew and our whole team, and we all knew that we have to follow the story. We have to trust the story and just stay true to the story. Don't do anything for yourself because you think it's cool, or you think it's going to make you look like a better editor or cinematographer. If it needs to be a bland shot for the story, you sacrifice that for the story.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah, and your stories always have like an intense focus on like one or two singular characters. Like, obviously that seems like a conscious choice. So like, in what ways does that kind of story like help you focus on communicating your themes and emotions like on screen?
Well, at least I can't speak for Corey because I know he's done like some films of his own, but at least from my experience, we focus on very few characters, mostly because we only need a very few good actors that we can trust with these type of stories. most of the stories that we tell are, I'd like to say, emotionally demanding to the actor. There's not a lot of good, like a lot of actors in our age that can, you know, process that script and portray it the way we need it to. So most of that stuff and most of the reason that we keep it, at least for me, with just a couple of characters is because, you know, we only have a couple actors available that can service that story. In a way, I personally prefer it because of the length of the film too. It's 5 minutes, so it's not like we can have like 10 characters in one setting. I know Michael did it very well with Bump in the Night. I don't know how you did that, man. It's how you balanced each and every character and gave them just the right amount of screen time. Personally, I can't do that, and I rather just focus on like one character. And I feel like the themes kind of flourish as the story goes along because you spend a lot of time with the character and you get to understand the character in just those in those short 5 minutes. And it definitely helps to kind of enunciate the themes that we're trying to portray.
Yeah, I definitely second that. I think it's the length, and I give props to Michael for having all those characters and making it work in a 5-minute film. That's really difficult, but for me, I would say it's definitely the length to tell the story, you know, a right way, or the way I envision it, or Abby and I envision it. I think it just goes back to the story. Do you need these characters? Or even in OLLIE, we had Anthony's girlfriend in it for a little amount of screen time, and just that quick scene. You know, she was a supporting actress, but that quick scene is so vital to the story. So it was really, and just the Anthony's mom throughout the story of OLLIE. You know, we never see Anthony's mom. You know, we only hear her, but you know, she's there and she has such a vital role throughout the story. And we see Anthony in basically every shot of the film. And I guess that reflects that, you know, the theme to show, you know, how lonely he is, and the audience, you know, can connect to him and connect to what's going on in his surroundings. So I feel like the only stories I've really told have been just solely just one lead that really, you know, carries the story.
And to add what you were saying with the girlfriend, once we finished shooting that scene, I don't know about you, Corey, but it was like a bittersweet moment because the scene turned out great and the actors were fantastic and they had great chemistry. But as a filmmaker, I was left wanting more. Like I was just like, I wish we could explore this relationship a little more, you know, and dive into why it's falling apart. Because it has to do with Anthony and the type of person he is and the experience that he's going through as a Puerto Rican living in the United States. But then, you know, we also had to, as filmmakers, we got to kind of restrain ourselves because there's things that we would like to explore more heavily. But then we also got to ask ourselves, is it going to get in the way of the story that we're actually trying to tell? So it's like that. We got to always keep that balance. And I feel like the whole team understands that. So it's like bittersweet making our films because we explore an aspect of a character that we love and we wish we could spend more time seeing more of that, but it's not possible. So I think part of being a filmmaker and telling stories in this short amount of time is just learning and adapting to that type of situation, just having to let stuff go and keep your eye on the prize, no matter how much it hurts.
Right. I mean, there's always the opportunity. You know, you don't need CMF to make, you know, your next film. Like you can make it whenever you want. So like, yeah, like I think you're right though, that, you know, this time limit and, you know, the compressed, you know, production schedule and stuff, like, yeah, really like sharpens and hones your skills in that way. You know, makes you find out like what is most effective for your story. But yeah, there always seems like in your movies there, like you can see the layers, you can see like, oh, there could be a whole other movie like with these characters and stuff like that. Like there's all those layers are there. Awesome. Well, so we'll move on to some general questions for the group, and you know, feel free to pop in whenever you have, you know, something to add. you know, we'll flip it back to Michael. But I'm realizing now that, like, I'm trying to phrase this question because it's like, what to you makes for a powerful or moving film? And you can answer that in a general way, or you can answer that in like what makes some of your favorite comedy films, like you know, the best comedy films ever made. Like what element? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that's a tough. I think for me, what makes a film really compelling to me is like I want to say the characters, but also kind of when there's, I mean, this is a pretty generic answer, but when you can kind of place yourself in that scenario. I know that goes for me a lot in comedy, and I found as I've made films that that's actually a lot harder to do than it looks. But to create a scenario, be it something that's awkward or funny, or something that's like hard or incredibly tense, to really like convey that emotion, not just for maybe a protagonist, but like for the audience too, where the audience is like, oh, I'm uncomfortable. Or like, as far as Bump in the Night goes, I have a lot of people say like, oh, that kid made me so sad. And I'm like, well, that's good, because that awkward sadness is the joke. You know, it's like, that's for us what we're going for. So kind of like just being able to convey that feeling that you're in that room, you know. A lot of my favorite comedy is awkward comedy, or it's dark, you know, awkward, where you're watching someone really just get themselves in a worse and worse situation. That's how I felt really about The Prank when we did that last year, that it's this experience watching it of being stuck with this guy who does not know how to stop digging, and he's making it worse for himself, and he's making you watch, he's punishing you because he doesn't know how to make it, he can't save himself, so he's got to punish everybody now. Right. I think that's just a really, like, you know, it's funny, but it's also like this really rich experience when you carry that into other, you know, other categories. A lot of the films that are here today are films that make you feel uncomfortable when the character's uncomfortable, or make you, you know, feel, you know, sad or happy when the characters are happy. And that feeling of being with someone, being like you're in that room, either stuck with the character or just, you know, right by their side, I mean, that's everything. I think that's what storytelling is all about. So that's probably what I'd go for.
Right. Anybody else have something to add to that?
Kind of second what Michael said. With comedy, I feel like the at least personally, I don't write many comedies. I enjoy comedy, but not really good at it. But for me, it's like if the comedy feels natural within the story. I'll use Michael's film as an example. You have so many like different types of comedy in your film. You have a little dog who bit a kid, and you also have the dentist and a vampire, and then a little kid that's dying. Those are four very completely different things, and the fact that you're able to traverse those layers of comedy and those different types of sense of humor is very important. And I think that's what makes a comedy good, just like how they handle their comedy, and it feels natural within the story. So
I feel like in general with filmmaking, I mean, in my opinion, it's really difficult. I mean, oh my gosh. And I feel like if you really care and you love filmmaking and you have like that passion and you're obsessed with it, that's how you're going to make a great film, because you can watch something, you can tell when, you know, there wasn't passion behind it, or like someone didn't really care, they went the easy way out, or they got lazy. Like, it's a huge commitment just from the pre-production to production to post-production. You know, it can consume your life. So if you really love it and you're obsessed with it, I think those are the values and traits you need to have to be a filmmaker.
Yep.
I totally agree just about that passion that you have behind it. And don't want to speak on behalf of you, Isaac, but I think for both of us, it was very much, we wanted to make a film that kind of just sparked this wonder. That would spark this wonder in our audience. We kind of wanted them to feel along with the character and just have like kind of go on this journey with her and just kind of bring out like kind of the inner child in all of our audience and kind of just have them have this experience. And so yeah, I think because Isaac and I, we were both so obsessed with all of like, we have been watching Wallace and Gromit together and we just really like it. And so kind of bringing that out. But then I think another aspect that was really important to us was also just the fact that this character, it was a little girl, and at that, a little girl of color. And so just having that as well, we thought was really important, and kind of making this experience that's like everyone can have this childlike wonder, but we want to kind of branch it out a little bit to see these other characters in animation.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that. I was gonna say a similar thing to the first thing you're talking about with like, I think a big thing is just being in the moment with the character and with the story. And like, I think that comes through in every aspect of filmmaking, like being in the moment in terms of production design. Does it make sense for the story? Being in the moment in terms of acting. Is that performance right there? Are you like with the actors there? And I think especially comes it comes to play in cinematography and editing, like every little moment, every like extra frame that you can have to linger on a character's eyes so the audience has a little bit more of a second to put them in the character's place. Like I think that's one of the most powerful things that filmmaking can bring. And personally, like I've gone a lot more into editing and like pacing out things more, and that's one of the most fun parts for myself, is finding those moments where you can linger for a second longer, and it adds to that because you're now with the character for that much longer, and you can actually like put yourself in that moment. And so yeah, that's just sort of being in that moment, in that space, is I think really, really important.
Can anybody? Oh yeah, go ahead. Meiya.
Agree about, powerful films. I feel like it comes from like when the audience can emotionally connect to your characters, like that's really where it's going to be the most impactful for them. Like if I cry, you're doing something right. I think for films, like it also when it ends and it makes you kind of think, like the film ends and you sit there and you're like, huh, I want more. Like that's also a really good sign of like, you're immersing them into this world. You've really, I feel like filmmaking is, a craft that you're kind of, it's the craft that you're sharing with the audience. Every, like you were saying, Isaac, every single like detail that goes into making it, it really shows in that end product.
Speaking of wonder, does anybody have like a movie or a scene or a moment that comes to mind that kind of like sparked that wonder for you?
For me, it was Shawshank Redemption, when the warden like throws the rock or like the marble into the poster, and then he looks down that shot and it's just like a tunnel. And I remember seeing that as a kid and I was like, wow, like that definitely, sparked wonder in me and wonder in filmmaking. So particularly that scene from Shawshank.
I think someone mentioned Fantastic Mr. Fox earlier, but I don't know if you guys remember the scene where Mr. Fox is looking and there's a wolf in the background, and he just raises his fist and the wolf raises his fist back. Just, I think I read somewhere that Wes Anderson made the whole movie because he wanted to include that scene, and just having those moments where it's like it's so quirky but it's done so well and it makes you feel something you don't know like all the little things that went into it. And just that scene, I guess it just makes me stop and like have to reevaluate the whole movie, and just makes me think about like I just love watching it.
For me, I don't know about you guys, but the more I make films, the harder it is for me to enjoy a film, because not only am I watching the story unfold, I'm also thinking a lot about all the technical aspects. And whenever I'm watching a scene, and if it's not well constructed or performed or written, or if everything's not flowing the way it's supposed to be flowing, I can see it and it takes me out of the movie. But there's the last, I think, 10 minutes of Whiplash made me forget that I was watching a film. Just seeing this kid playing the drums like nonstop, and the editing is so fast, you don't even have time to really think about how the movie was made. You're just in the moment. And I remember watching that scene in theaters and just being blown away. I couldn't believe it. It was just, I don't think I felt the way I felt with any other movie after watching that one scene. You know, it's pretty incredible, I think.
Yeah, that's you know what we're all going for, is the, you know, that moment that just like transports the audience. Like it's just something magical that can happen like that. What is something that you guys are not seeing in the film landscape that you feel the need to fill as a filmmaker?
Just going about like passion. Like I feel like there's a lot of quantity now than quality, especially like we're using digital cameras now. We're not actually using film. Well, some directors do, but there's like a love and care when you use film. And I feel like now there's just a lot of movies coming out that are just focused on like looking good or looking cool, like having action, making it a thriller movie, having all these special effects. And I feel like they're not focusing on the story, the characters, and what really matters, what really, you know, immerses you into, you know, watching movies. It's not all these cool effects and transitions. And I feel like, I mean, definitely, you know, since we've gone digital, I feel like that's happened. And like I've shot on film a few times, and I'm starting to now, because it makes me appreciate, you know, like film and, you know, photography, and how much like love and care you actually have to put into it and take in the moment, compared to like having like a digital camera and just taking, you know, as many takes as you want and not planning it, not really caring, because, you know, you can just delete them or take another shot. So I feel like a lot of movies now are, they just want it to look good, and they're not focusing on like the fundamentals of the film aspects, like story, characters, and everything else.
One thing that I've noticed that's been missing from cinema and filmmaking in general, and this is very biased, but that's the Puerto Rican perspective. I'm Puerto Rican. I was raised in Puerto Rico. I lived there for, my God, like 14 years maybe. And every time I see a movie and I see a Puerto Rican character, or there's a scene of a movie, of a big budget movie that was filmed in Puerto Rico, I'm always seeing the same thing: the stereotypical Puerto Rican man or woman that's just very loud and listens to reggaeton and salsa music. Or whenever there's a big budget movie filming in Puerto Rico, it's always on the coast or the capital. And that's not what my country is, you know? Like, I've never really seen a true Puerto Rican perspective, which is what really inspired me to make OLLIE, because 2017 Hurricane Meiya hit the island, and one very disappointing documentary was made for Netflix that did not capture the reality of the situation at all, but I haven't seen any of that. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to tell a story about a Puerto Rican young man that has the same struggles as everybody else, with universal themes. And that's something that I aim to achieve. If I ever make something out of myself as a filmmaker, I definitely want to take that perspective and show it as accurately as I can, specifically because there's no Puerto Rican film industry. Like, the film industry that down there is almost non-existent. And I think that's a waste, because there's so many talented people, so many different stories, and a whole new perspective that the world hasn't seen yet completely. So that's something that I like to work on in my career personally.
I'm just gonna say it because I think it's exciting. I'm actually gonna hit 20K subscribers like in a minute. Like, I'm at 19,998. So if I've been distracted this whole call, that's not a brag. That's just I'm too stressed to not think about it. What is missing? Let me answer the question, because I'm here for that. I don't know. I think comedy is a really interesting area, and I think, I don't want to say like going for the easy joke or going for the obvious joke, because maybe someone would see what I do as that, but I think I have a unique voice in the comedy filmmaking landscape, and I think in that area there is a way to tell a joke that is popular, and I think there's a way to tell a joke that has like a little more, I don't want to say soul, it sounds dramatic, but like with a lot of my sketches, I usually have a moment where I think to myself, someone else could have done that, and you know, and they would have done it in this way and explain, you know, oh, they would have gone for this joke. You know, I've made videos where I'll get a comment over and over and over again that'll say like, oh, you should have said this, you should have said this, you should have said the whole thing. And I think like, no, I'm really glad I didn't. One, because you expected me to, you know, and it's okay, sorry, it just happened. It just okay, sorry. It just happened, 20K. But it's with that, when it comes, sorry, when it comes to that, I think being kind of true to your own voice in comedy is really important, because there's a very normative, very popular way to be and to ride trends and to follow other people's voices and to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this style. I really like that show on Netflix, I Think You Should Leave. Everybody loves that show, but I really like that show, and I'll find myself writing sketches and then going, I'm writing like that show, like write like Michael. And I think when I write like Michael, that's my best stuff. And I think that's something that I need to keep in mind. And that actually applies to all of us, is that we all have unique voices. And when you write in your own voice, you do bring something. And there's a person out there who probably goes, oh, your voice like inspired me, and I started writing like you, and then I thought to write like me, and it's it changes you. So probably, yeah, just like kind of being really true to yourself and what you find funny, and like listening to others, obviously, but like not really trying to not compromise too much on what you think is the best way to do this for your sense of humor. You know, if you're not making yourself laugh, you're not going to be that funny. And you might make others laugh, and I've done that. I've made videos that I thought, oh, it's fine, and other people find it really funny. But I find that I'm the happiest when I'm making stuff that I'm editing it and I need to take breaks because I'm laughing and I'm giggling and I'm saying, say to my girlfriend, like, get over here and watch this really fast. Tell me if you like this. Those are the moments that it's like all about. And when my friends are on set making me laugh. So I think really just like following that and following what you care about in a comedy landscape, as opposed to doing what others do. Yeah.
Awesome. Meiya, what do you want to bring to the field?
For me, I guess like this kind of strays away from like my gut punching message of my film, which is like fight climate change or else. But I don't believe that every film needs to be like that. You can just be like passionate about something fun and lighthearted on like, whatever film project you want, and it can still be an amazing film. And so what I would like to say about this is like my own personal belief that I'd like to see more diversity in filmmaking today. Like in our film, in my film specifically, we have like 2 Kheyal dads, and we have Vela, our main character, who also represents like the greasy businessman stereotype, but she's also a woman. I think shows today are getting better and better about like diversity and representation, but I want to see more. I want to see like myself represented in films, just speaking about like authenticity in people, and stories that aren't necessarily like for spreading like messages about diversity, but just like having these characters there will show that, they're characters that are just like everyone else. People like this exist in real life. And I think that's so important to teach people, and also like young audiences watching today, to embrace diversity as it is.
For sure. Absolutely important. Isaac, Kheyal?
Yeah, I mean, like everybody, like other people have said, like diversity of stories is a really important thing in terms of, because I think just creating that like societal empathetic experience is one of the most important things that films can do, whether that be through like in terms of like race, gender, sexuality, or in terms of like types of stories, types of people, everything there, or like the type, like, I don't know, there's just so much content out there. So like honing it down, I think there's, I guess I'm getting a little bit sidetracked, but like everything everybody's said. And then if for myself, I really see a lot of like the larger larger movies missing a little bit in terms of like editing, in terms of pacing, in terms of having those moments with characters. And I think that's something that could definitely be improved on. But like I said, like that's more of like a smaller thing. I think like the actual like story aspects of things, which I think is growing, is going to be the most important change that we'll see in the future.
Yeah. And I just want to add, I also just to agree with everybody here, but I do think that like growing up, I hardly ever saw someone who looked like me in film or on TV or anything like that. And like now you're seeing a lot more shows, and for me specifically with like a South Asian representation, but there's still so much more to be done. And so I think that if I do enter the film industry, what I want to do is make these stories so that kids who are interested in film, or just kids in general, can see that there's so many possibilities out there. There's so many different stories, and kind of give people a broader perspective about what it means to have a certain identity, about what it means to like have your voice kind of reflected. So yeah, so I think that's really important going forward. And I think also kind of what Meiya said, like having characters that it doesn't necessarily need to be about them being diverse. They just need to be there, and just having them there has such an impact. It's very subtle, but it makes a big difference. So I think that's what I want to see.
Awesome. We could talk all day. We'll end with just a real quick, what are you working on next? What is next on the horizon for everybody here? So we'll start with Isaac and Kheyal and snake back around.
Isaac and I actually, we all, and another friend, we started a new animation company together, actually probably directly as a result, as kind of making the film and then having it be so recognized and so well accepted. I think it was the morale boost we needed. So I'm actually right now in between like summer travel and whatnot, I filmed a little stop motion thing and I'm editing it. Hopefully it'll be done in the next few days. So that's what we've been working on.
Yeah. Through that, we've got a couple projects going through there, some animated stuff, one longer term project, which will be an eventual like full 3D animated, like 5 to 10 minute long short film. But that's going to be a couple years down the line that we're sort of going through some drafts of the script for that. Yeah.
That's awesome. Is it everybody that's going to be working with you? Are they kind of scattered? Are they kind of in Atlanta, or where are they?
Mostly Emory folks that we know, but we have a few contacts in the Atlanta area, but it's like right now we have a nice little Emory film student group.
Yeah.
Awesome. Meiya.
Yeah, for me, I'm going into my last year at SJSU. Originally, I was planning to co-direct a film with one of my friends, but that fell through. But we still have, this idea that we're probably going to be working on maybe during winter break or some other time that isn't like, for school specifically, about like my friend's father passed away, and so we're going to make this kind of tribute film to him and to like their family, and how when they cooked curry together it would like resolve arguments and bring them together, which is really sweet, and I'm really excited to work on that. Additionally, for my final year, I'm going to be working on a thesis film. I'm working under someone. We're currently working on pre-production right now during the summer. It's going to be a short film narrated with like a poem. It's basically going to be about like the origin of society's beauty standards and like Filipino culture and overcoming them to embrace yourself.
That sounds awesome. Excellent. Abby, Corey, have you guys been working on something over the summer?
Yeah, we've been conceptualizing a couple ideas. Corey, was mostly like you who really was, so you had to take the reins on this one.
What was that about the romance we're writing up?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so we want to go a little bigger for our next project and really take our last, our senior year and spend the majority of it on, one film instead of doing, shorter, smaller short films. And we want to write like a 15 to 20-minute romance. That it's going to be personal. We're going to relate it to our relationships and stuff, and maybe other people as well. And we're excited. We haven't written any. We haven't written.
I've never written a romance before.
Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. And then right now I'm working on a documentary on my neighbor. He's a sculptor, and he came from Denmark, and just documenting his life and his whole story, and that should be exciting.
Yeah, I was noticing that like none of your guys' films are necessarily about like a relationship or love or anything. So like yeah, I'll be excited to see you guys like dive into that topic. So Michael, what you got cooking?
I'm always working on stuff. A lot. Recently, I've been getting really into making little 30-second, just super short skits. That I've been really happy with. To kind of let you play with an idea that's like maybe doesn't have the mileage for like 5 minutes, or maybe is like, oh, I kind of want to film in a movie theater, but I don't think I can get a movie theater for like 4 hours. I can get one for an hour, so let's do it. I've been really experimenting with those and just really having a lot of fun. But also I've got some bigger stuff in the works. Me and the vampire actor Jono from Bump in the Night, we've been working on this thing for a couple of months now. It's a short called Swordplay. It's this kind of medieval comedy that's kind of, it shouldn't be too long, but it's kind of a fun, knights and very very like Monty Python-y kind of, but with a Like a Fox Studios twist. And that's been a whole lot of fun. We've been putting kind of a lot of money into it, maybe a little bit too much, and it's all my money, but I'm really excited. Big costumes and really big like production value. With the pandemic, it's been hard to do stuff big production value, more than like a little bit every year. So I'm really excited to get back into that. And yeah, just I'm always making stuff. So yeah.
Great. Well, thank you all for giving your time and participating in the panel today. We are certainly excited for more art from everyone here and, the broader emerging filmmaker community. So once again, big congratulations to the Best Picture nominees, and everybody wave bye. Yes.